Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Again, on behalf of ISKCON Scarborough, I would like to welcome each one of you to this Friday evening program. For those of you who have joined us late, we were reading from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, titled Dhyana Yoga, and we were reading verse number 19, and I'm going to read the translation just for the benefit of devotees who joined us late. As a lamp in a windless place does not waver, so the transcendentalist, whose mind is controlled, remains always steady in his meditation on the transcendent self. So in this verse, Lord Krishna is explaining to Arjuna that a lamp in a windless place does not waver. So if you see, when there is a lamp in an open area, there is so much of wind, so it wavers. But if the same lamp is inside the house, it does not waver that much because the wind is blocked, because it's inside the house. Similarly, if you have that glass casing around that flame, it protects it even more. It shields from the wind from blowing this flame, so it's much more steadier. So in this context, as a lamp in a windless place does not waver, a transcendentalist whose mind is controlled. Similarly, the person's mind, our mind, is compared here to that of the flame. So it will wander here and there, it will waver here and there because of sense gratification and sense objects that come from all directions. So if they are shielded in an appropriate way, then the mind is steady as the flame in a windless place. So if we are able to control the mind from the sense gratification which come from all directions, then we will also be steady as a lamp in a windless place. One Mahatma who's a personification of this controlling of the mind is Sri Ramanujacharya. On 27th of March, which was 3 days ago, was the appearance day of Sripad Ramanujacharya. So if you have not seen the picture of Sripad Ramanujacharya, this is Sri Ramanujacharya. This is a wonderful book. If you don't have a copy, you can order it through krishna.com, and it's compiled by Naimisharanya Das. It's an authentic Vaishnava book. It can be purchased from krishna.com. It's a wonderful book that all of you should have a copy of this. So, Sri Ramanujacharya, the name Ramanuja, Rama Anuja. Anuja means is younger brother of Lord Ramachandra. So, in the first incarnation, he was Adishesh, and in the Treta Yuga, he appeared as the younger brother of Lord Ram as Lakshman. And in the Kali Yuga, he appeared as Sripad Ramanujacharya. Now, we should also understand the timeline. But before that, we'll have to hear as to the reason of his advent. Why did Sripad Ramanujacharya appear? Anybody knows why did Sripad Ramanujacharya appear? There is a reason behind his appearance. He came to actually nullify the effects of, anybody knows? Shankaracharya. Adi Shankara, when he came, he introduced this philosophy of Advaita Vedanta. Advaita Vedanta means it's monism or non-dualism. Some of you may have heard these terms. Advaita Vedanta means monism. Monism means only one. Non-dualism means, again, not two, only one. Or it's also called as impersonalism, and also, as Prabhupada usually mentions, Mayavadi philosophy. So that was introduced by Shankaracharya, and before we understand the teachings of Ramanujacharya or even Shankaracharya, we need to go back in time, which is before the appearance of Lord Buddha. Lord Buddha is the incarnation of God. Anybody disagrees with that? Lord Buddha is an incarnation of God and Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is stated in the Amala Puran, Srimad Bhagavatam, as early as the first canto, 3rd chapter, 24th verse. So when you go home, you can refer to this verse. First canto, 3rd chapter, 24th verse. that's a prophecy of the arrival of Lord Buddha. In Srimad Bhagavatam, we have those wonderful nectarian books here, Amala Puran, it's there, first canto. So it says, Lord Buddha will appear in Gaya, and Lord Buddha's mother is Anjana. So it's clearly mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam. So any historians are here? Anybody is a historian? So if there is an historian, they may argue Buddha's name was Siddhartha Gautama. His name was not Buddha, so somebody may argue. And then, if you know a little bit further, you may also inquire, Lord Buddha was born in Lumbini in Nepal. So how come Srimad Bhagavatam says he was born in Gaya? And the third point is, his mother was Queen Mahamaya. And how does it say in Srimad Bhagavatam his mother is Anjana? So these are common questions that somebody who knows history may ask. Now, Srimad Bhagavatam is called Amala Puran, that means spotless Puran. So how can there be a mistake? So there is no mistake. And the reason is, yes, Lord Buddha, when he was born, his name is Siddhartha Gautama. And he was born in Lumbini, Nepal. And his mother's name was Queen Mahamaya. But the reality is that his real birth is when he got this spiritual initiation, which was under the Bodhi tree or Bo tree or the fig tree in Gaya. Gaya is in Bihar in central India. So his real birth as Buddha was in Gaya. And also his mother, Queen Mahamaya, died when he was a very, very young boy. So he was brought up by his grandmother Anjana. So absolutely there is no contradiction here. Amala Puran is Srimad Bhagavatam. So advent of Buddha is already there as prophesied in Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam was penned down by Vyasadeva, and he's called as Trikalagya. That means he knows past, present and future. And this was put down penned down 5,000 years ago. And 2,500 years after it was penned down, Lord Buddha appeared. So that is a prophecy. 2,500 years before something can happen, it's already there in Srimad Bhagavatam. Not only that, the advent of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who's Lord Krishna himself, who came in this combined form of Lord Krishna and Srimati Radharani, his appearance, is it there in Srimad Bhagavatam? It is there in the 11th canto. The nice verse we have, Krishna Varnam Tvisha Krishnam Sankupanka Srapasadam Yajnai Sankirtana Praye Ejati Me Sumedasa. In this age of Kali, intelligent men worship the incarnation of God, who always chants the names of God. Though his color is not blackish, because it says Tvisa. Tvisa means gold. Though his color is not blackish, he is Krishna himself, and is accompanied by his confidential associates and servitors. So the appearance of Lord Buddha is there in Srimad Bhagavatam, the appearance of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is there, and also the appearance of all the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya Acharyas and Alvars, that is also in Srimad Bhagavatam. In the 11th canto it says, the devotees, there will be exalted devotees of Lord Narayan who will be born in Dravida Desa. Dravida Desa means South India, and they will be, drinking the waters of Tamraparni, Mahanidhi, as well as Kaveri. And also, devotees from previous Yuga, like Satya Yuga, will be so eager to be born in Kali Yuga to associate with these exalted devotees, so that in one short lifetime, they can attain spiritual perfection. So it is there in Srimad Bhagavatam. And also there is a prediction of course, the arrival of Kalki Avatar, who is going to arrive at the end of Kali Yuga after 432,000 years. So amazing predictions are there in Srimad Bhagavatam. So Lord Buddha, why did he appear? Lord Buddha appeared to actually put an end to merciless killing of animals. So he introduced this ahimsa and also voidism. So he came to bewilder the people at that time when they were misusing Vedas to actually kill and eat animals. So the original purpose of this sacrifice was meant for other yugas, where the intent of the sacrifice is also fulfilled when an animal is killed, so-called killed, but because of the wonderful chanting, the efficacy of the chanting of the mantras, as well as based on the paraphernalia that were required and that was available in different yugas, especially ghee. Now we don't have pure ghee. But in other yugas, we had pure ghee and other paraphernalia required for these sacrifices. So the paraphernalia was absolute, it was perfect, as well as the Brahmins were qualified and they chanted the Vedic mantra so well that this animal that is killed during the sacrifice is reborn again in a younger body. But in Kali Yuga, we don't have Brahmins who can chant these mantras perfectly. We don't have paraphernalia meant for this. So in this age, Kali Yuga, this is not recommended. The only sacrifice or yajna that is recommended is Harinam Sankirtan, Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. That is what is recommended in this age of Kali. So he came to put an end to this slaughter of these innocent animals, and he preached this voidism. That means there is nothing, there is no God, there is nothing, only ahimsa. So that was Buddha's philosophy. And later on, when Adi Shankara came, he introduced this Advaita Vedanta philosophy. As we discussed, it's monism or non-dualism or impersonalism, which means everything is Brahman. Everything is Brahman, and there is no cosmic manifestation. Cosmic manifestation is an illusion. So that's what he said, cosmic manifestation is an illusion. That is Advaita Vedanta philosophy. Everything is Brahman. That means you're God, I am God, the table is God, everything is God. Anything in Brahman is God. So that was the philosophy of Shankaracharya. He had to introduce that. That is based, so Brahman is there based on Upanishads. It is not out of Vedic literature, but it's just one portion of it. As we know, Brahman, Paramatma, and Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, after this, Ramanujacharya appeared. So, 2500 years ago it was Buddha, then 1300 years ago it was Shankaracharya, then 995 years ago. So, from today, 995 years ago was the appearance of Ramanujacharya. And then his philosophy was Vishishta Advaita. So, that is the philosophy of Shripad Ramanujacharya, Vishishta Advaita. And what does that mean? Vishishta Advaita means, he said, cosmic manifestation is not an illusion, it's a reality. As we know, it's a reality, but it is temporary. So cosmic manifestation is a reality, but it is temporary. Why illusion? He said, illusion means there are two things that are real. For example, a snake, somebody can look at a rope and they can think it's a snake. That is what we call illusion, correct? And we go to a desert, there is a mirage. You see that hot, reflection, and then people think it is water. So the heat wave is a reality and water is a reality. It's just that we mistook the heat wave for water. So that is an illusion. So, but both are real. Same way, the rope is real, the snake is real, but then it was an illusion that we mistook the rope to a snake. So he introduced the philosophy of Vishishta Advaita, which means cosmic manifestation is real, and also there is soul, then there is matter, and then there is Ishvara. But then the soul and the matter, inert matter, is dependent on Ishvara. So that was Shripad Ramanujacharya's main philosophy. And then since Ramanujacharya, we have Madhvacharya, who appeared 750 years ago, and he introduced this Dvaita philosophy. That means there's clear distinction between Ishvara and the spirit soul. And then all these teachings were perfected by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself 526 years ago when he appeared, after he appeared, and his teaching was Achintya Beda Veda. So we heard about Advaita Vedanta philosophy, then Vishishta Advaita philosophy, and this one is, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teaching is Achintya Beda Veda. All of you would have heard this, Achintya Beda Veda. It is inconceivably and simultaneously one and different. Inconceivably and simultaneously one and different. What does that mean? We are one in quality with the Supreme Lord. One in quality. Sachidananda Vigraha, a spirit soul, Satchit Ananda. Eternal existence, eternal knowledge, and eternal bliss from spirit point of view. We are the same. But quantitatively, there is absolutely no comparison. We are infinitesimal. Infinitesimal means so minute, and the Supreme Lord is infinite. So we are infinitesimal, Supreme Lord is infinite. So simultaneously and inconceivably one and different. Achintya Beda Veda philosophy. And before we go into some of the pastimes of Ramanujacharya, so we also have to know about the 4 sampradayas. So there are 4 sampradayas which are bona fide, and Srila Prabhupada said anybody in any of these 4 sampradayas, if they strictly follow the teachings in this sampradaya by the acharyas, everybody goes back home, back to God. So the first sampradaya is called Brahma Sampradaya. This is coming from Lord Brahma. And it is also called as Brahma, Madhava, Gaudiya, Vaishnava Sampradaya. So all 4 are Vaishnava Sampradaya, even though it is called as Brahma Sampradaya. Then the second one is Rudra Sampradaya. It is a form of Lord Shiva. So Brahma Sampradaya, or Brahma, Madhava, Gaudiya, Vaishnava Sampradaya, who are all the main acharyas. Madhvacharya, that's why it's called Madhva, Brahma, Madhava, Madhvacharya. And of course Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the 32 Acharya disciplic succession, even though he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the 22nd Acharya in that disciplic succession. And Srila Prabhupada is the 32nd Acharya in that disciplic succession. Then the second Sampradaya is called Rudra Sampradaya. It is from the form of Lord Shiva. And who are the main Acharyas in this Sampradaya? Vishnu Swami. So if you listen to Prabhupada's lecture and read Prabhupada's book, he quoted several times about Vishnu Swami. So Vishnu Swami is one of the main acharyas in this Rudra Sampradaya. And also Vallabhacharya. Some of you would have heard the name Vallabhacharya. Vallabhacharya is also from the Rudra Sampradaya. And then the third Sampradaya is the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya. Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya. It is originating from Goddess of Fortune, Lakshmi herself. But it's a Vaishnava Sampradaya. The main acharya is Sri Ramanujacharya. And the 4th Sampradaya is called Kumara Sampradaya. It is originating from the sons of Brahma, the 4 Kumaras. So that is the 4th Sampradaya. And who's the main Acharya? Nimbarka. Nimbarka Acharya is the main Acharya in this Sampradaya. So these are the 4 bona fide Sampradayas. And Ramanujacharya is coming from this Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya. He was born in the year 1017. He was born in a city called Sriperumbudur. Sriperumbudur is about 45 minutes from Chennai. And before he was born, we have to go a little bit back. The chief disciple of Yamunacharya. Yamunacharya is another great Vaishnava from South India. And Yamunacharya had many disciples, but main disciple is called as Shailapurna. So Shailapurna had 2 sisters, Kantimati and Deeptimati. Kantimati is the elder sister, and she married Keshavacharya. And Deeptimati is the younger sister of Shailapurna, and she married Anandabhatta. So from Anandabhatta and Deeptimati, Govinda was born. Some of you may have heard this exalted personality's past time, Govinda. So he was born. He is Ramanujacharya's cousin. So before Ramanuja was born, the parents went and prayed to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Parthasarathi. Partha means Arjun and Sarathi means charioteer. So there is this wonderful temple in Chennai. It's in Trivilikeni. Some of you, anybody is from South India, Chennai? So this particular temple is, I was fortunate because it's only 2 kilometers from where I used to live, and it's on the way to go to my school. So all 12 years I used to pass by this, but I was not in that conscious for me to know the value of this temple at that time. But for the last few years, I know how wonderful temple this one is. It's called Parthasarathi temple. The Lord is 6 feet tall, and he's got a mustache. So it's very unique. Lord Krishna's got a mustache because in line with the tradition of a charioteer. Chariot drivers do have mustache. So Lord Krishna, 6 feet tall, he's got mustache. He's got scars in his face because in the battle of Kurukshetra he was there. So there are scars in the face. And he does not have any weapon because he promised he's not going to take any weapon. So he's got only the conch in his hand. So this is the deity that the parents of Ramanujacharya prayed to vehemently, and then Ramanujacharya was born in Sriperumbudur in 1017 AD. He was a great scholar in Vedic literature, and the first pastime we can hear today is when he was studying under Yadava Prakash. There was a wonderful scholar at that time, his name was Yadava Prakash, and he was studying under Yadava Prakash. So Yadava Prakash was his teacher. One day, but the only problem is Yadava Prakash was a Mayavadi philosopher, Advaita Vedanta, or we talked about monism or non-dualism or impersonalist philosophy. That means everything is Brahman. There is no personal feature. Impersonal means no person. Personalist, impersonalist. That means no person. That means God is not a person according to this theory. So he was a Mayavadi philosopher, but he was a scholar in Vedanta. And one day they were discussing Chandogya Upanishad, and in the evening it is the custom of all the students one at a time to massage the feet of the Guru. And it was the turn of Ramanujacharya to massage the feet of Yadav Prakash. And at that time a student who was there in the class in the morning came running and he said, I have a doubt about the verse that we discussed this morning, which is 1.6.7 from this Chandogya Upanishad. And the verse started with the word Kapyasam. Kapyasam means it's actually describing the personal feature of the Lord, about the beautiful lotus eyes, pink lotus eyes of the Lord. And because he's a Mayavadi philosopher, he does not believe in the personalized feature of the Lord. He gave an explanation which was very derogatory. We will discuss that during lunch, during our Prasadam time, but it was a very, very inappropriate explanation about what that Kapyasam meant according to Yadav Prakash, to that boy. And when Ramanujacharya was massaging the feet of Yadav Prakash, hot tears fell from his eyes, like rivers flowing from both the eyes. And it flowed, it fell onto the body of Yadav Prakash. And he turned around and said, why are you crying? Then he said, the way you explained this word Kapyasam is not right. And then he quoted all the Vedic literatures and he explained what is the real meaning, which is this pink, beautiful, lotus-like eyes of Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And at that time, Yadav Prakash, the Guru, got scared. He's a dangerous person because he's introducing this personal feature of the Lord, and that will destroy this Advaita Vedanta philosophy itself. So initially he thought, let me chase him out of the school. His school, he's the teacher and he's got many students. Let me chase Ramanujacharya out of the school, then we'll be okay. Then he thought to himself, no, even if I kick him out of the school, he will start his own school and he will introduce this personal feature of the Lord, and then all the students will join his school and he'll become a great teacher, and again this Advaita philosophy will be gone. So then he called all his close students and he said, what can we do? They all came up with a plan. The only way is to kill him. No point in chasing him out of the school because he will start again. Let's kill him. Then one person said, if we kill him, no, he's a Brahmin. If we kill him, then we'll incur all the sins. Then he said, his imperfect knowledge in Vedanta, he said, we'll take him to northern India, actually to western India near Vindhya Hills. Then there is Ganges there. We kill him, he'll incur sin. We go take bath in Ganges, all the sins will go. So this is a wrong way to explain, and this idea was, we'll kill him. That's more important. But we'll take bath in Ganges, so no sins, no problem. So they all decided, they took him, other students, and Govinda along with Govinda, the cousin. We talked about Deeptimadi and Anantapata's son. He also went along. They went to western part of India near Vindhya Hills, and last minute they were planning, when Ramanujacharya was not there, they were planning how they are going to kill him. And at that time Govinda heard it for the first time, and quietly he found where Ramanuja was and he told him about this dangerous plan that the guru of him was planning to kill him. So he was heartbroken to hear that, he was shattered to hear that his guru was trying to kill him, and then he quietly escaped. Now he's 18 years of age, miles away from his city of Kanchipuram in South India. He's so far up northwestern India near Vindhya Hills, he does not know where to go, how to go, he's got no friends. He's just walking into the forest. And once he escaped, Yadav Prakash and all the other students started trying to find him. They're going after in every direction. Where is Ramanujacharya? We have to kill him because that's the main intention, to kill him. They could not find him. Ramanujacharya went, it's almost dark time. It was almost darkness. And at that time he does not know. He's scared because there are wild animals there. Robbers are there. Bandits are there waiting to kill somebody, even for the smallest dress that they have, shirt that somebody is wearing, a kurta somebody is wearing. He's scared, he does not know what to do. At that time, an unbelievable courage came to his heart. Why should I get scared? The Supreme Lord Narayan protects all the devotees. So why would he not protect me? I'm not worried about anything. So he took courage and he was about to take one direction. In that almost dark time, there is a fowler and his wife. they're coming by. Fowler is a hunter. He's dark in color, well built. He looks a little bit scary, so they approached him, and the wife of the fowler asked, Brahmin boy, how can you come to this dangerous forest by yourself? Did you get lost? Where are you coming from? And then he said, I'm coming so far from south of India, from Kanchipuram. And Kanchipuram, oh, myself and my husband, we are actually going to Kanchipuram. Kanchipuram and Rameshwaram. Why are you going all the way to Kanchipuram and Rameshwaram? Ramanujacharya asked. Then they said, lifelong we've been fowlers, catching birds. So we incurred so much of sin. So we want to go to Rameshwaram and Kanchipuram to expunge all our sins because we committed so many sins. So we'll take you there. He was so happy, he could not believe what he heard. So they took him few meters, and then it was already dark, and then the husband said, let's not go anywhere. Let's have a small bonfire here, and we'll stay here tonight, and then tomorrow morning we'll go towards Kanchipuram. Again, this is weeks and months it took for Yadav Prakash and all the other students to walk up to Vindhya Hills. So here he said, tomorrow we'll walk towards Kanchipuram. And then the wife of the fowler said, I'm so thirsty. And the fowler said, wait, tomorrow morning there is a well nearby. We'll get water from there. Now go to sleep. They went to sleep. Early morning they got up, and then they're walking. They took few meters. They walked few meters, and then they found this well that the fowler had said. And then the fowler's wife said, Ramanujacharya, can you get water for me? He went and got water First time he got, she drank more. She was so thirsty again. Second time, third time. Fourth time he went and brought the water. The fowler and his wife were missing. He was shocked that it's a wide, big forest. It's not like there is a road and it took a turn and he couldn't see. It's a big forest. They mysteriously vanished. The husband and the wife have mysteriously vanished. And he looked to the other side. You can see tall gopurams, the temple tops. And he's wondering, this is familiar. And then there was a man who was walking on the road, and he called him and he said, can you tell me which city is this? What is this place? Then that person said, why are you pretending as though you don't know this city? This is Kanchipuram. I know you are the young disciple of Yadav Prakash. He couldn't believe that. He hardly walked last night, the previous night, and he just walked for a few minutes the next day morning, and he's already in Kanchipuram from Vindhya Hills. At that time, he prayed. He knew that Lord Narayan and Lakshmi had come to save him from these wild animals and these robbers in this dense, dark jungle. And at that time he offered this prayer, which all of us offer when we are offering Bhoga, the third prayer. Namo Brahmanya Devaya, Go Brahmanetaya Cha, Jagaditaya Krishnaya, Govindaya Namo Namaha. So Krishna, Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the well-wisher of the cows and Brahmins and all living entities in general. So that was how the Supreme Personality of Godhead helped him escape from the death of, it's actually the plan of his own guru who wanted to kill him. And then, one day, there was a princess of Kanchipuram. So this is all in Kanchipuram. So there's a princess of Kanchipuram who was, there was a Brahma Rakshasa ghost who occupied her body. So the king tried so many means to get rid of that ghost from the princess's body. But he called the Pandits, he called the Pujaris, he called the magicians. All of them came, did so many things, but she was still possessed by this Brahma Rakshasa ghost. There's a ghost in the princess's body. This Yadav Prakash, even though he's a Mayavadi philosopher, and even though he's a scholar, he's also a magician where he can get rid of the ghost from anybody's body. So the king calls Yadav Prakash, can you please take this ghost out of my daughter's body? So he comes and chants whatever mantras he knows, and he does all the tricks that he knows. When he came, actually this princess was, actually two of her legs were in the rafters, and she's hanging upside down like a bat because of the ghost's power inside the body. And then she's repeating the mantras that Yadav Prakash is chanting. And Yadav Prakash could not believe it, because these are powerful mantras that can, take the ghost out of anybody's body. And then that ghost, Brahma Rakshasa ghost that is occupying the princess' body, said, you fool Yadav Prakash, you think you can take me out of this body? I am more powerful than you. And I know both of our previous lives. In the previous life, you, Yadav Prakash, was a lizard in a well. And you were fortunate enough to take this birth of a Brahmin because a Vaishnava washed his hand and that water fell on you as a lizard, and in the next life you became a Pandit. This time. And me, I was a Brahmin. The ghost is saying, I was a Brahmin in the previous life, and I did not worship Lord Vishnu, and I was ridiculing all the followers of Lord Vishnu, and I became a ghost. So it's a lesson for all of us in reincarnation. If you want to know how one becomes a ghost, how a lizard becomes a Pandit, so from this story, we know that. And then, the only way me, the Brahmarakshasa ghost, can go out, you can chase me out, which is good for me as well, is when you get your youngest student, Ramanujacharya, to come and he has to place his lotus feet on my head. So again, another lesson. Even a ghost knows the value of the lotus, of the dust from the lotus feet of exalted Mahatmas and Vaishnavas. So, Ramanujacharya was called, he put both his feet on the head of this princess who was possessed by this Brahmarakshasa ghost. And then Ramanujacharya said, how do I know that you're leaving this princess body for good? Then the ghost said, in the northern part of this palace you see a big tree. When I go, I will break the topmost branch and it will fall down. And then when you hear the sound, then you know that I've left this body for good. Immediately when he placed the feet, the Brahmarakshasa ghost left the body, the branch, the tallest branch from the highest branch fell down, and this girl woke up, the princess woke up as though she's waking up from a dream, and she did not know what was going on. Then the king of Kanchi came, fell at the lotus feet of Ramanujacharya, and he bathed him, not with water, with gold coins. He bathed him with gold coins because he was so relieved and happy that his daughter is relieved from the Brahmarakshasa ghost. And what did Ramanujacharya do? He gave all the gold coins to Yadav Prakash, his guru. So Yadav Prakash, at that time he wanted to get some glory. He was telling the king, he's my student, he's my student. But internally he was very, very unhappy because what he could not do, that is to take this ghost away from this prince's body, Ramanujacharya was able to do. Then he wanted to get initiated by Kanchipurna. Kanchipurna is an exalted Vaishnava, but he's from the Sudra class. And then he said, Kanchipurna said, I'm not qualified to give you initiation. Then, eventually, I'm fast forwarding a bit, he got, Ramanujacharya got initiated by Mahapurna, and then he got the sannyasi initiation by Kanchipurna. And there are so many lessons that he learned from Mahapurna as well. Once he performed the funeral ceremony of a lower caste person, Sudra, who Mahapurna did the cremation. He performed the rites, last rites. And everybody ostracized it. They said, this is not according to Dharma Shastras. A Brahmin cannot do this. So everybody left him. He was only left with Atula, his daughter, who had come from his in-laws' house. And then Ramanujacharya goes and asks to his Guru Maharaj what happened. And then he explains to him, what I did may be wrong according to Dharma Shastra, but what is real Dharma? He learned from Mahabharata. Mahajano enagatasa panta, to follow just follow the Mahajans, then you can't go wrong. It's not just the 12 Mahajans that we know who are, we discussed this I think last time, who are the 12 Mahajans? Narad Muni, Sukhdev Goswami, Prahlad Maharaj, Bali Maharaj, Janaka Maharaj, Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, the 4 Kumaras, Swayambhu Manu, then we have Bhishma, then we have Yamaraj, and we have Kapila Muni. So these are the 12 Mahajans, but then Mahajans are also great personalities. Lord Ramachandra, so he quoted this example, Lord Ram. So Prabhu will be giving us a wonderful nectarian class tomorrow on the appearance day of Lord Ramachandra. Lord Ramachandra performed the funeral rites of Jatayu. Jatayu is just a bird. Mahajan, you follow the Mahajan. And same thing, Yudhishthir Maharaj actually prayed to Vidura. Vidura is supposed to be Sudra by birth. So he said, a devotee does not have this material designation as Sudra, Brahmin. We know this wonderful verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Naham Vipro Nachanarapati Navi Vaishya Sudra, I'm not a Brahmin, I'm not a Vaishya. That's a wonderful verse. So in this way, when you're a Vaishnava, all this material designation does not apply because the devotee is already liberated. So that was a lesson that Ramanuja learned from Mahapurna. And then once, this was an amazing pastime, Mahapurna was coming and falling at the feet of Ramanujacharya. All the disciples were watching. What is this? Your Guru Maharaj is falling in your feet and you are not feeling embarrassed or not doing anything. He said, Mahapurna is actually trying to show everybody how one has to offer obeisances. He's trying to teach a lesson to everybody. So if he's trying to prove a point where he's teaching this to all the disciples, who am I to stop them? Then everybody were still baffled. Then they go to Mahapurna and they ask, why did you fall in the feet of your disciple, Ramanujacharya? And at that time, Mahapurna said, he's the embodiment of my Guru, Yamunacharya. Whatever qualifications my Maharaj, Yamunacharya had, is a personification of that. Then all the disciples knew how an exalted devotee Ramanujacharya was. And we have 5 more minutes. I can keep going. So I have got this, I've been told that we have to finish by 8 o'clock. So forgive me if we just stop abruptly at 8 o'clock. So this is another pastime where this is before Ramanujacharya got initiated. Yamunacharya had called Mahapurna and he said, can you please get Ramanujacharya from Kanchipuram to Srirangam? All the way. So it took 5 days for Mahapurna to walk from Srirangam near Kaveri river to come to Kanchipuram. And then he said, okay, let's go. My Maharaj wants you to come there. Please tell your family. I said, no. Order of the Guru is most important. I don't have to tell any of my family members. He just immediately left and they went towards Srirangam. Near the Kaveri river, there were so many people gathered. So he did not know what was going on. And at that time, one devotee said, the earth has lost its most valuable gem. That is, Yamunacharya has gone back to Vaikuntha. Because he was already old at that time, he's gone back. He fell unconscious to the ground and Mahapurna was hitting his head with his fist because they couldn't believe that Yamunacharya was no longer there. They said, Alabandar has gone back. Alabandar is a name given to Yamunacharya. That's another fascinating pastime in pastime. So Yamunacharya was another exalted devotee and he was a king at one point. And then he was studying under Bhasyacharya. Bhasyacharya is another scholar. He was studying under him. And then there was a scholar in Pandya kingdom, and his name was Kolahala. Some of you may have heard. Kolahala is a wonderful scholar, and he was defeating every other scholar. And it was a rule by Pandya king that all the pandits who were defeated, they have to give money to Kolahala. And then again, I'm fast forwarding a bit. There was this great debate in the Pandya hall, and this little boy, Yamunacharya at that time, asked 3 great questions. He said, you have to refute these 3 statements. He said, you have to prove that you have to do the opposite. Your mother is not barren. You have to refute the statement. Your mother is not barren means your mother cannot give birth to a child, but he's already born. Kolahala is already born. He said, refute the statements. Your mother is not barren. The king is embodiment of good quality and sinless. And the third one is the queen is chaste. Just imagine, he put all these 3 questions. All these 3 questions, if he answers it, he's saying the king is sinful. If he's able to answer it through the Shastras, he'll be saying that the king is sinful and the queen is not chaste. And his mother, his own mother, Kolahala mother, is barren. He has to prove that. And then he was able to quote from Manu Samhita, if a lady gives birth to only one son or one daughter, one child, that means she's barren. She's barren according to Manu Samhita. And the second one is the king, 1/6 of all what the people in the kingdom do, he will get 1/6 of all the pious credits as well as impious credits. And this was in Kali Yuga, so most of the people were doing impious credits, so he was able to refute. So Kolahala could not, so he's answering his own questions, Yamunacharya. And the third one is, the queen is not chaste. How can, the queen is chaste, so he has to prove the queen is not chaste. Again from Manu Samhita it is said, the king has 8 demigods in the body. So if the queen is serving the king, that means she's also serving other men, other demigods in the body like Surya, Agni, all of them. So she's not chaste because she's also she's also doing this. She's also serving the other men who are represented in the body of the king. So that is Yamunacharya. And then when Yamunacharya, they knew that Yamunacharya had left the body, his right hand was clenched like this. And then Ramanujacharya asked everybody, why is his right hand clenched like this? Was it always like this when he was alive? He said, no. Then he said, okay, he read the mind of Yamunacharya and he said, I will propagate the name of Lord Vishnu throughout the land, throughout India. Then one finger came. The second finger is, I will, almost done, the three fingers, when the third finger comes, he can. So the first finger came out. And then he said, I will write Sri Bhashya, which is a commentary on Vedanta Sutra, because that will refute the Advaita Vedanta philosophy. The second finger, he's already left his body, but Yamunacharya's second finger came out. And third one, I will name an exalted devotee by the name of Parasar. Parasar Muni is the father of Vyasadeva. We will continue next time. Hare Krishna. Ramanujacharya ki jai.